The elevator doors opened quietly on the 10th floor, revealing a wide office space filled with natural light from tall windows that overlooked the river below. Emily stepped out with calm focus, holding a small folder that contained her documents and notes from the university. The consulting firm's office was different from the campus buildings she had grown used to. The atmosphere here was organized, purposeful, and steady, with employees moving between desks while discussing reports and project plans in low professional voices. A woman at the front desk greeted Emily with a welcoming smile and introduced herself as Ms. Parker, the internship coordinator responsible for guiding new students during their first weeks. Emily followed her down a hallway lined with glass offices where teams worked quietly around conference tables covered with charts and printed reports. The workspace felt structured yet calm, a place where decisions were made carefully rather than quickly. Ms. Parker led Emily to a small desk near a group of analysts and explained the schedule for the coming weeks. The internship would involve reviewing financial data from local companies, preparing summaries, and assisting senior consultants with research projects that help businesses improve their operations. Emily listened closely, taking notes in the same careful handwriting she had used since her first semester at the university. By the end of the morning, she had already been assigned her first task, a report analyzing customer trends for a regional retail company. The assignment required attention to detail and patience, two qualities Emily had quietly strengthened through years of studying and working independently. Throughout the day, she observed how the consultants approached each problem methodically, discussing ideas around conference tables before reaching decisions supported by careful data analysis. Emily worked steadily at her desk, reviewing spreadsheets and preparing summaries that she submitted to one of the senior analysts by late afternoon. When he returned the document with several small notes of approval, Emily felt the same quiet sense of progress she had experienced many times on campus. It was not loud praise or dramatic recognition, but it was acknowledgement that her effort had value. Over the following weeks, the internship began to shape her routine. Each morning she arrived early, reviewing the previous day's notes before meetings began. The projects grew more complex as she learned the systems used by the firm, but Emily approached each task with patience and focus. Occasionally, she would look out the window toward the river below, watching the sunlight reflect off the water while the city moved steadily through its busy afternoons. One evening near the end of June, after completing a long report requested by one of the consultants, Emily stepped outside the office building and paused on the sidewalk. The air was warm and filled with the quiet hum of traffic moving through the downtown streets. She realized that nearly 2 years had passed since the day she had left home with a single suitcase and a quiet determination to build something different for herself. The life she was creating now did not depend on anyone's approval or attention. It was built piece by piece through effort, discipline, and the understanding that progress often happened quietly. As Emily walked toward the bus stop that evening, the city lights began to glow along the river, reflecting in long lines across the water, while the future she had been working toward continued to open slowly in front of her. The weeks of summer passed with steady momentum, and Emily gradually became one of the most reliable interns in the consulting office. Each morning she arrived before many of the other employees, organizing her notes and reviewing project updates before the day officially began. The senior analysts began to trust her with more detailed assignments, asking her to prepare summaries for meetings or gather research that would later shape important business decisions. Emily approached each responsibility with the same quiet focus she had developed long before arriving in the city. She listened carefully during discussions, asked thoughtful questions when clarification was needed, and spent extra time verifying the accuracy of every report she submitted. One afternoon near the end of July, the consulting team gathered in the main conference room to review several proposals for a regional company that was planning to expand its operations. Emily had been asked to assist with compiling customer data trends, and as the presentation moved forward, one of the senior consultants paused to highlight the clarity of her research. The recognition was brief but genuine. Several colleagues nodded in agreement while reviewing the charts projected on the screen. Emily sat quietly at the end of the table, taking notes while the discussion continued, but inside she felt the steady confirmation that the path she had chosen was leading somewhere meaningful. After the meeting, Professor Green from the university happened to visit the office to check on the progress of the internship program. When he spoke with Emily in the hallway, he smiled warmly. He told her that the consulting firm had already shared positive feedback about her work and that opportunities like this often open doors for students who demonstrated consistency and patience. Emily thanked him calmly, understanding that moments like this were the result of countless quiet hours of effort that no one had noticed before. Later that evening, she returned to the small apartment she had rented near the bus line for the duration of the internship. The space was simple but comfortable, with a narrow kitchen table positioned beside a window that looked out over the lights of the city. Emily placed her notebook on the table and reviewed the notes she had taken during the day, organizing the information for the following morning's tasks. As she worked, her phone vibrated softly on the table. When she glanced at the screen, she saw another message from her mother. This one was longer than the previous ones, mentioning that Jessica had been struggling to decide what she wanted to do after finishing high school, and that the family had been talking about Emily more often lately. Emily read the message slowly before setting the phone aside, without responding immediately. The words did not carry the weight they might have once held years earlier. Her attention returned naturally to the work in front of her. Outside the window, the city continued moving beneath the evening lights, and Emily understood that the life she had been building step by step was no longer something fragile or uncertain. It had grown into something stable, shaped by discipline and the quiet determination that had carried her from a small bedroom in a distant town to the professional world unfolding around her now. August arrived again with warm sunlight spreading across the river and the steady rhythm of the city continuing outside Emily's apartment window. The internship that had begun as a careful opportunity was now approaching its final weeks, and Emily had settled into the routine of the consulting firm with quiet confidence. Her desk had gradually become a familiar workspace covered with neatly organized reports, a notebook filled with detailed observations, and a calendar marked with project deadlines. The analysts she worked alongside no longer treated her like a temporary student observing from the corner of the room. They often invited her into discussions, asking for her perspective on the data she had reviewed. Emily responded thoughtfully, choosing her words carefully while presenting clear conclusions supported by the numbers she had studied. One afternoon near the end of the internship, the senior consultant named Daniel Brooks asked Emily to join him in his office after the weekly team meeting. The office overlooked the river, where late summer sunlight reflected against the moving water below. Daniel leaned back slightly in his chair and reviewed a few pages from the report Emily had completed earlier that week. He explained that the clarity of her analysis had helped the team make an important recommendation to one of their clients. Then he paused for a moment before speaking again. He said that the firm was impressed not only with her research but also with the consistency she had demonstrated during the entire internship. Students sometimes arrived with enthusiasm but struggled to maintain discipline over time. Emily, however, had shown steady focus from the beginning. Daniel told her that the company would be happy to offer her a returning position during the next academic year if her university schedule allowed part-time work. Emily listened quietly, absorbing the words while the city moved calmly outside the window. She thanked him for the opportunity and explained that continuing to learn from the firm would mean a great deal to her. As she left the office later that evening, the sky above the river had begun to soften into the colors of sunset. The streets were filled with the usual movement of people finishing their workday and heading home. Emily walked slowly toward the bus stop with her bag over her shoulder, thinking about the long path that had brought her to this moment. 2 years earlier, she had left a small house in a quiet neighborhood with little more than determination and a carefully packed suitcase. Now she was stepping into professional opportunities that once seemed far away. When she reached her apartment, she placed her notebook on the kitchen table and reviewed the notes from the day, already planning how she would balance the coming semester with the possibility of returning to the firm. Her phone vibrated once more on the table, showing another message. From her mother. This time the message sounded more serious, mentioning that the family had been facing some financial difficulties and that they hoped Emily might call when she had time. Emily looked at the message for a moment before setting the phone aside. Outside the window, the city lights began reflecting across the river, and Emily understood that the next chapter of her life was approaching, one built on the quiet strength she had developed long before anyone else had noticed.